Have you ever wondered who is stronger, the ant or the elephant? The ant is definitely strong enough to be one of nature's most fascinating creatures. But can it take down an elephant? Elephants are among the largest land mammals on the planet. But how do they compare to ants? Let's find out. When we talk about strength, we're referring to physical power. In this case, we're looking at the amount of force someone or something can exert on an object, causing it to move in some way. There are various ways to measure strength, such as the amount of weight that can be lifted or the amount of damage that can be done by a blow. These measures can be used to determine the relative strength of two individuals. However, they are not useful when comparing very different kinds of creatures. For example, how would you compare the destructive capabilities of a nuclear bomb with the punch of Mike Tyson? They are just too dissimilar. So when comparing the ant and the elephant, what aspects of strength should be taken into consideration? We will look at the amount of force the ant can exert compared to its body size, its bite strength, its lifting capacity, and finally, the number of ants it takes to kill an elephant. So let's get started. How much force can an ant exert? Force is measured in newtons. A newton is the amount of force required to accelerate a 1 kilogram mass at a rate of 1 meter per second squared. To measure the force an ant can exert, scientists use a device called a force gauge. This is essentially a spring scale. When the ant steps onto the scale, it causes the spring to compress. The amount of compression is directly related to the force exerted by the ant. In general, ants can exert forces between 49 and 500 times their own body weight. The average force exerted by an ant, according to studies, is around 100 times its body weight. For comparison, humans can lift almost double their body weight, but only for a few seconds. Most of us couldn't even lift an elephant, let alone 100 times our body weight. So if an ant can exert a force 100 times its own body weight, how powerful would it be if it were the size of an elephant? Let's consider an average-sized elephant weighing 6,000 kilograms. If we assume that the elephant has the same muscle strength to weight ratio as an ant, it would be able to exert a force of 600,000 kg or 600 tons. That's equivalent to the weight of 12 double-decker buses. To put this into perspective, if an elephant could suddenly gain the strength of an ant, it would be able to destroy entire buildings with ease. But things aren't so simple. The reason why ants are so strong is not just because of their muscle-to-weight ratio. It also has to do with the structure of their muscles. Ants have more muscle fibers than vertebrates of similar size. And those muscle fibers are closer together, which means they have a higher surface area for attaching muscles. They also have an exoskeleton, which provides a rigid framework for muscle attachment and allows them to generate more force. Finally, ants can store more energy in their muscles, enabling them to exert greater force for longer periods of time. Some ants can lift objects many times larger than themselves. Leafcutter ants can carry 50 times their own weight, while army ants can carry 100 times their own weight. How much can an elephant lift if it had the strength of an ant? Taking into account these additional factors, an elephant could probably lift about 200 times its own weight. Even still, that would be equivalent to the weight of 4 space shuttles. Okay, now let's move on to the bite force of an ant. But first, a word from today's video sponsor. Strength isn't always about brute force. Sometimes it's about being smart and efficient. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Brilliant, the sponsor of today's video. Brilliant is an online learning platform with thousands of lessons in science, computer science, and math. Whether you want to know more about solar panels, neural networks, astrophysics, special relativity, or computational biology, Brilliant has you covered. Brilliant offers interactive courses designed for people at all levels, from beginners to advanced learners. You can learn at your own pace and on the go, with the Brilliant app available on all devices. Learning doesn't have to be a chore. It can be fun and engaging. For example, Brilliant's Everyday Math course can help you make sense of percentages, ratios, and proportions, while their Introduction to Artificial Neural Networks course can teach you the basics of neural networks and how they work. To start learning today, click the link in the description below or visit brilliant.org/real engineering, and the first 200 of you will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription. Thanks to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. The strongest recorded bite force of any animal belongs to the saltwater crocodile. Its bite force is estimated to be between 17,000 and 34,000 newtons. Humans have a bite force of about 160 newtons, which puts us just above a woodlouse, which has a bite force of 135 newtons. Elephants don't bite, so it's hard to know their bite force. However, scientists estimate that their bite force is somewhere between 11,000 and 18,000 newtons. The strongest bite among insects belongs to the Goliath beetle, with a bite force of 39 newtons. Now, considering that the average weight of a Goliath beetle is less than 4 grams, its bite force is actually 9,150 times its body weight. This is far stronger than the strongest land mammal, the elephant, which can only manage 11,700 times its body weight. Even the strongest ant, the driver ant, whose bite force is about 130 newtons, weighs 20 to 40 milligrams, which means its bite force is 3,150 times its body weight. To put this into perspective, if humans had the bite force of an ant, we would be able to bite through bricks and concrete. As we can see, comparing the strength of the ant to the elephant depends on how we define strength. If we look at sheer destructive power, then the elephant is much stronger than the ant. But if we look at the strength to weight ratio, then the ant is much stronger than the elephant. Some ants are even stronger than crocodiles. Now let's move on to the number of ants it would take to kill an elephant. This is probably the easiest part of the comparison. In 1982, a group of researchers from the University of California set up an experiment to determine how long it would take for a colony of driver ants to eat an elephant. The elephant was skinned and deboned, then cut into small pieces and distributed among the ants. The ants quickly devoured the meat, and the entire elephant was eaten within 6 hours. There are many species of ants, but we will focus on the leafcutter ant, one of the most common types found in tropical forests around the world. On average, a leafcutter ant colony can have between 100,000 and 2 million ants. Assuming an average colony size of 500,000 ants, it would take about 1,000 colonies, or 500 million ants, to eat an average-sized elephant. To put this into perspective, there are approximately 10 quadrillion ants on the planet, which means that it would take 5% of all ants on Earth to eat a single elephant. But this is just an estimate. The actual number of ants it would take to kill an elephant could vary depending on several factors, such as the size of the elephant, the species of ant, and the availability of other food sources. In conclusion, the answer to the question of who is stronger, the ant or the elephant, depends on how we define strength. If we look at the raw destructive power, then the elephant is clearly stronger than the ant. But if we look at the strength to weight ratio, then the ant is much stronger than the elephant. Some ants are even stronger than crocodiles and other large predators. If humans had the strength of an ant, we would be able to lift almost double our body weight and bite through concrete. It would also take a massive number of ants, 500 million to be exact, to kill an elephant. But the ants would quickly devour the elephant, leaving nothing behind but bones. Now you need to watch What If Humans Had a Tail? What would happen? Or check out How Big Would You Have to Be to Crush an Elephant?